Hello, friends. Welcome to the Nope Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg, joined today by Lydi Naicker. We are talking business. So for those of you who are in the audience who are entrepreneurs, this is for you. For those of you who are what I lovingly refer to as wantrepreneurs, not quite there yet, this is even more for you. And if you're traditionally employed and you just like listening to a good conversation, she says, not speaking good, this is for you too. So at the time of recording this, today, I launched a brand new offer. And I am keen to hear your thoughts because when you approached me about this episode, you're like, let's talk about boundaries before we start promoting something. And I was like, maybe I needed you 12 hours ago. But Lydi, where would you like to start us off?
Well, thank you for having me. I always say, in my experience, the biggest secret weapon that a business owner can have, and you'll definitely agree with me on this one, is the ability to set and maintain strong boundaries. And I've heard this so many times from different business owners. I've been doing this for so long. I just want to help people and do the fun stuff like teaching and doing my artwork, but I don't know the business side of things and I am struggling. And so I think it has something to do with the fact that many people feel so terrified to even set the boundaries in the first place, but it's not their fault because they learned early on that it wasn't safe to set boundaries in the first place. And those people who push the boundaries, they've developed such effective strategies to get what they want that most people just give in to avoid a fight. And so they get haggled, they get bullied, they get talked out of rules that they set for their own business. They feel afraid to weave boundaries into their background systems and structures. And so the consequences are clients don't pay them on time. They get lots of cancellations last minute. They don't get repeat clients, etc. And then their business isn't sustainable. And I think that's the main goal for a lot of us business owners is we want a sustainable business. And sustainability is so nuanced. And so I don't think it can be guaranteed. Like somebody can't promise you, I promise that your business is going to be sustainable, but it can be with the right conditions. But it's also a lack of knowledge of what boundaries to even set in the first place and how to structure their business operations, which also isn't their fault. I mean, there's no one to catch them when they make the transition from working world to running their own business. And that's how I feel about interweaving boundaries into right at the beginning, before you even promote stuff, before you even hand the first business card out, because even those symptoms are, you do all of this beautiful work and you work so hard and you give out the business card, you send out the websites, or you do the workshops and nobody bites or nobody books. And you're wondering, why? Did I do something wrong? Am I just not that good? And it's not true that you aren't that good. You actually are really good at what you do. It's just we are not taught about the boundaries. We're not taught about how to structure things from beginning to end. And that's how I feel about it.
You've raised so many good points. The first one that stood out for me was you often, not always, but often you get into the business because you're passionate about it. If you are a creative and you make beautiful sculptures, you might want to sell your artwork or you might want to teach others how to sculpt themselves. If you find a modality like energy healing or something that you have experienced firsthand and had great shifts in your life, and you want to help others with this modality, so you go and train in it. Like all of these things, the heart is there, the passion is there, but the business of selling and structuring and payments is different to the business of doing what it is that you love. And I think, when you come from a traditionally employed, like you are employed to do this, like my very first paid job, which often makes people laugh because I'm a highly sensitive introvert, was as a clown. Side note, I lasted exactly one day, but I was paid to do that. I didn't have to gather the balloons or the makeup or the little kids or whatever. It was like turn up, blow up the balloons, sing a song, do a dance. It was terrible, trust me. But, like all of that was provided. But then say I loved it and I was like, I'm going to have my own clown business. Not only do I need the outfit, the shoes, the makeup, I then need to organize the venues that I attend. I need insurance because, you need, at least in Australia, working with children check. Like the list is exhaustive. You haven't even made a dime yet. So all of this to say, I love your point about boundaries, because people are often so well-meaning. When you start promoting something, there's so much interest. People respond, I'm so interested, but the times don't work for me. Or I'm so interested, but I have all these things on. And sometimes it's legit, like say you're launching something in America at 4th of July weekend. That literally could be a time thing. Like, people aren't in their offices or whatever. But sometimes people just aren't really good at saying no, and they want you to feel good about yourself. So they're like, oh, I do this, but when they have no intention of doing it whatsoever. And the other point that you raised was you can't guarantee. And very recently, Tad Hargrave, which is how you and I think originally connected, he has a new signature workshop. So anyone listening, if you haven't come across Tad Hargrave, Marketing for Hippies, look up his YouTube channel, join his list, get his starter kit. Like, cannot endorse him highly enough. And I'm not paid for it, just as a side note. But he's got a new signature workshop. And what I loved when I attended it was he was like, by doing these 5 things, I cannot guarantee your success. But if you don't do these 5 things, I can almost guarantee your failure. Like, he wasn't quite that blunt, but it was like, by doing these things, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to ride off into the sunset. But if you don't, like, if you don't have boundaries in place and an ability to uphold them, you're very unlikely to succeed. And I think that's something for all of us to consider. So when you say, boundaries before people promote something, what common kinds of things do you think, people should have in place? Like for me, I can think of heaps, but I'm interested on your take, and we can take it from there.
Sure, thank you. I think some of the most important boundaries would be, apart from business boundaries, a lot of stuff is personal too. So things like being able to stand up to someone who could potentially be a bully, somebody who is likely to say, you know what, I think your price is too expensive. And that's something that really hits a lot of us. It's like, what do you mean we're too expensive? I mean, I priced this right. Or it might even be below market value and you think that it's too high, but somebody is going to try and bully you. I've had that. I've been doing my henna art for almost 10 years. And throughout all the 10 years, I've heard you're too expensive, or can you lower your prices, or, you're a bit pricey. But being able to almost have a script to say, thank you for your input, and maybe ask them more questions to say, okay, why do you think it's expensive? And then saying, maybe it might even land up as something as, I can see why I'm not the right fit for you, but thank you for asking me. I can refer you to someone else. So having scripts ready to say, if this happens, this is what I'm going to say in return. If I think the conversation is going to go awry, let me have another script for that, just in case, and having something like that in place. So having scripts for situations that come up. Business boundaries, you'll need to understand what the differences are between from when you are working a formal job versus what the terrain looks like in an actual business. So for me, it took me the longest time to learn that, usually when you're in a corporate space or you're in a bigger organization, the culture is work, 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 do not rest. Get up early, punch the clock, work nonstop, and then you go home. When you're running a business, now your boundaries are going to change. You're going to say, if I do not rest, I'm going to burn out and I'm going to fail at this. So changing the boundary of work, 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 work to, if I work, I need to play as hard. And so, yeah, working and playing are actually best friends. And so it sounds very ironic because a lot of us feel like, I can't go to sleep now. I know it's 8 p.m., but I still have this thing to finish. The irony is, the more you rest, the stronger your brain is, and you can get maybe, let's say you were working, and you only were able to do 30% of the work if you just pushed really hard. But if you went to sleep and you woke up and you had a nice rest, in maybe the shortest space of time, you'll get 80% of the work done. And it's shocking how effective you become. Another thing would be, let me see, with boundaries, knowing what containers your work needs to fit in. So there's so many things, there's so many boundaries, things like what are your ideal clients like? And I know that's a bit of a journey as well to find out, but realizing that if you have a certain type of clientele, the way that you show up is going to be different from if you had a different type of clientele. The pacing is going to be different. The work hours are going to be different. And so those are some of the boundaries I can think of, personal
So
boundaries.
many. I've got so
Yeah,
many things to
just
say.
so many.
Firstly,
Yeah.
when you're talking about clients, this is a quote. I heard Serena Hicks say this once, so I attribute it to her, but she's like, there's a client at every price point and there's a critic at every price point, including free. You can put
Yes.
something on for free and somebody can be like, that time doesn't work for me, or whatever. And sometimes, and as you said, people will say, and you had that experience with your henna business, oh, you're a bit pricey, or that's too expensive, but sometimes when people say that's pricey or that's expensive, it's not necessarily them saying no. That it's just statement. Like my son had dental surgery recently. That was very pricey. I could have gone around and got second opinions and whatever, but I stated, it was expensive. And it was funny, he just had his follow-up at the time of recording this yesterday. And as we were leaving, like with the surgeon who looked it over and said it's looking really good, my son's like, how much did it cost? And when I told him, he's like, next time someone tells me my breath smells, I'm going to say my breath smells like money. But, just because someone says it's pricey or expensive, the thing I've learned from 8 years in business now is to hold. Don't jump in there. Don't offer them a kitchen sink or a pair of steak knives or a discount or whatever. I just shh. And for the longest time on my desk, I had a sticky note that literally said shh, because people say stuff. It doesn't mean anything. If they then say, I'd like a discount or I can't, the phrasing is so critical. And I love how you said having some scripts, because if someone says to me, you're expensive or it's pricey, now I would just wait and go or what does that mean? And so it's funny, the first time someone told me to say, what does that mean? I was like, isn't that sarcastic? But no, it's such a valuable question, because you can get more data and more information. Like, what does that mean? Because to one person, like the amount I paid for my son's surgery would be a drop in a bucket. But for me, that was a big chunk of change. So what does that mean is a really valuable question. And also, as you said, I used to, like, if I was too pricey for some, refer them to others. I don't do that anymore. Not because I think I'm the best or whatever, but it's like, well, the onus is on them to find somebody else. Like, I used to be such a people pleaser. I'd like go line them up. Like, if someone comes to me and we're not a fit, I will refer them to another colleague. If they want something that I don't quite offer, I'll refer them to another colleague. But if they're kind of like, well, you're a bit pricey, aren't you? I'm not going to then go and do their work for them. Like, all the best. So I think that's a point. But also, too, people can think you're too cheap. Like, I have a $9 offer out right now. I've got 2 of them. And the response to that has been fascinating. Some people are like, oh, it must be shit because it's so cheap. And I was like, no, it's actually a really good course. And some of the people who've done it, I was like, why are you only charging $9 for this? You could charge so much more. I was like, yeah, I could. But in my opinion, people don't pay for information. They pay for, accountability, transformation, the ability to ask questions, all this sort of stuff. Most of the stuff that I teach is on this podcast for free. If you want to listen through 400 episodes and figure it out, or you could Google it, 100%. But by having somebody that you work with who can collate it and give you the answer that you need. So yeah, boundaries with clients and people who are going to have opinions. And the biggest people that you didn't mention that is family and friends. They're like, how much do you make per hour? Or how much do you charge per hour? Or what is it that you're charging for? And it's like, and that leads into your third point, which is, ideal clients. Don't get pricing information from your family and friends because they got no idea. So as well-meaning and as helpful as they're trying to be, it's not, like when you look at my hourly rate, it is quite high, yes. But it also doesn't account for the time I spend before the call prepping and reading over the person's thing that they've sent in to me, the time I spend after the call and that follow-up exchange we have. It's not just here it is and right off into the sunset. So like your pricing is very personalized to you. So that was points 1 and 3. And the second point you made about boundaries with self. Am I not going to answer my phone after 8? And as you said, if I've got a task that's taking so long, I can't count the number of times in the past I would push through and stay up to 9, 10, 11, and then have to redo it the next day anyway, because it was just crap. Like, it was, as you said, if I'm functioning on 30% barely and a good night's sleep, I can function on 80%. Like, and the best example I have of this, so as I said, my son had surgery, so he'd been home for 10 days. And so this just gone earlier in the week, he finally went back to school, and then my daughter went away to school camp. And so I had nobody at home for the first time in 10 days, except my husband. He had the day off. And part of me was like, well, I could catch up on all this work. I was like, no, blow it. Let's go to the movies. So my husband and I went to the movies, and like, we just relaxed. As you said, work hard, play hard. Part of me, like old me, never would have done that. You've just had 10 days off. I was like, no, I didn't have 10 days off. I had 10 days of caring. And now Suze needs some downtime. So I think sometimes when we work for ourselves, we become the CEO, the chief everything officer. I'm the nurse and the taxi and the sometimes, all this stuff. And then, it's like, no, where is our downtime, and what actually is downtime for us? Because when people say to me, oh, I went to the supermarket alone, that was like a holiday. I'm like, no, eating is essential for life. That is not a holiday. That is a human right. So, like reading a book, sitting in the sun, gardening, doing whatever it is for you, that is self-care. Buying food that you need in order to live is not a holiday.
True. And you're so right about that. And I also noticed, as as I'm also sure that you've felt the same way about this too, that the more that you strengthened your business, or the further along that you went, the more territorial you became over your free time. And I noticed that with me, I'm very territorial over my weekends, and I'm territorial over my time after 5 p.m. Even in my previous job, because I worked healthcare, so it was research, development, clinical trials. And so it was extremely difficult to get a hold of me after hours. And all my work colleagues will say, I tried to phone you. Do you know how hard it is to get hold of Lydi? It is so difficult. And so I think it is double crucial that you take the time off as well in your business. And that, I think that is, if not the biggest lesson that you will learn as a business owner, and that is guard your time, guard your personal time. If a client says, I want to see you on Saturday, you can, and you don't work on a Saturday, you can say, thank you, but I'm not available on Saturday. How does Tuesday afternoon work? Or how does Friday afternoon work? And I noticed that when I didn't guard my time, I was resentful on Monday. And I would say things like, "Oh, these people don't appreciate anything that I do. I do all of this work for them. Why can't they just leave me alone?" But meanwhile, that's a me problem. I didn't guard my own time. I didn't take my own weekends off. And now it's not the other person's fault that I'm now angry and grumpy on Monday. And so uh, that's how I feel about that point as
I
well.
think very early in business or new in business, people are afraid to say, like, if they're like, I'll see you Saturday, and to come back and say, actually, I work Tuesdays and Thursdays or whatever, because they're scared to lose the business, or they're scared that, other people won't come. But the thing is, most people, like, and this leads into your point about ideal clients. Is the person an ideal client, or are they not? Because people are pretty accommodating when you say, that's not available. How about this? Because I don't know about you and your experience early in business, but for me, when people message me and they're like, I need to see you tomorrow, or I need to see you on a Saturday, or at some obscure time. I remember once this lady messaged me on New Year's Eve, and I made a call. I'm not proud of this. This was before I did boundaries. You teach what you most need to learn so you can learn it. 7 a.m., New Year's Day. I'm waiting on Zoom for this woman because it was urgent, and she was a no-show. So more often than not, when people are urgent or freaking out or whatever, are they actually looking for help, or are they looking for co-regulation because their nervous system's activated? So if you find that you're coaching a lot in the DMs, if you're answering people's emails, like if they're a client and you have an agreement and that's in your agreement, that's different. I'm not talking about that. But if it's before you've even onboarded, like I remember just feeling resentful just answering messages. I don't even answer DMs at all now. And some people are like, how can you do that? Aren't you afraid it's going to cost you business? I'm like, not ideal client business, because people will have a look. Like, it's funny, on my Instagram, I barely use the platform. It literally says, don't DM me. I won't answer. here's how to contact me through my website. I'm pretty sure the first time you contacted me, it was either through my website or responding to one of my emails. I'm like, email, website, whichever. That's how you contact me. And I trust that people will make that effort. Otherwise, they're usually trying to sell me some shit, or they're in that highly nervous, anxious state. They're not actually looking for help. And then I feel, as you said, resentful. As soon as that feeling enters my body, for me, that is the red flag for me. As soon as I'm like, it's their fault, they're so demanding. I'm like, oh, hang on. Where have I not guarded my own time? So, because it is a sign. As soon as I feel obligated or resentful, they're two things that I pause immediately and I unpack.
Right. And the best part about finding your ideal clients is that they will respect all your boundaries, because the best part about your ideal clients is that they themselves have strong boundaries. And so when they know how to set their own boundaries, they'll say, okay, now you tell me what your boundaries are so I can respect them. And you'll find that people who are boundary pushers, they're not the ones paying our bills. Our ideal clients are. And the irony is that our ideal clients our ideal clients are willing to pay us 3 to 5 times more than those who haggle our prices, and sometimes even more.
I would say even more.
And
Yes. And the point you
yes,
made there that I was just jumping in on is, you communicate your boundaries, they communicate their boundaries. Sometimes you can come up with some sort of accommodation. So the funniest thing ever, the person who helps me with my website is gone on a holiday. She's away for like nearly a month. And she's like, these are the things that if something goes wrong, if something goes terribly wrong. See, I'm like, it's a month. If my website's down, like I'm not, anyway, all this to say, she's like, if the backup person she has running her business is not answerable, she's like, send me a message on Facebook. And I was like, because she's like me, like we just don't DM, it's not a thing. And I was like, man, I'd have to be like in a dumpster fire, like have somebody have hacked everything and a complete panic to send you a message on Facebook. And she's like, I know. So like when you have that relationship with someone, that if you're like one of my best friends, like just friends, I phoned her a few weeks ago and she picked up the phone. She's like, are you okay? I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you called me without texting first. I thought you must be dying. Because I always text and say, are you free at 5 or do you want to chat? Because I'm an introvert. I don't answer my phone. Like, don't ring me unless there's an emergency. And she's a raging extrovert. And she was like, you never just call. You always text first. And I was like, oh, I was out for a walk and figured I'd see if you wanted to chat. And she was like, I answered straight away. I thought you might be dying. But, when you have those boundaries with people, they not only respect them and honor them. And I remember not that long ago, I had a client and she canceled with like an hour to go on the session. And then I just added it to the end of her thing. And I said, oh, here you go. And she goes, oh, well, because your cancellation policy is 24 hours, I'd assumed I'd lost the session. And normally she would have. And I said, to be honest, I wasn't feeling that great. So like I would have done the session, I'm sure, but you actually did me a favor. So like, let's just add it back on. But you get to have that. So she's like, oh, that's amazing. But she'd assumed that she'd lost it because that is very clearly stated in my client agreement. So you get to have that flexibility if you want it, but you also know that it's honored if for whatever reason you don't want it. But yeah, sometimes if I'm feeling not the best or whatever and someone cancels, I will say, let's do it again. But if I'm there waiting and they're not there, it's like, no.
right.
So what about when people start promoting stuff? Because you kind of alluded to this, or maybe I just heard it in my head, and they're not getting the response that they'd expected. What do you recommend for them then?
So I would say, I'm going to use a bit of a corporate term, and that is go back to the drawing board. But basically, before you even promote anything, I would say, even if you take a day, even if you take a week, and I would say just put as much effort into this as you can. There are, in my view, there's 5 steps that you need to do beforehand. The first one is find a problem that needs solving, that you enjoy solving. So maybe something like, for example, someone's got insomnia and they cannot sleep, and they're at a point where now they're suffering at work, or their relationships are struggling, and they say, I have to get help for this now. That's when the second step comes in, and that is develop a really good product or service around that issue. And that is, you can have interviews with people, talk to them about, what have you tried in the past? what brought the insomnia on, and do those kinds of questioning and interviews and making sure, okay, here's my solution. And then, you just you come up with a really good solution from your experience that could possibly help them. Then the third step is you get a minimum viable product. So something that's like the bare minimum, and then something that you put together that you can show to people, almost something like you can have in your hand. The fourth step is test, 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 test. Even if you test it out in one day or a few hours, even if you do it as a beta test with your friends, just get one person, get two people, get three people, and say, so you've had insomnia, test this thing out and give me feedback. And this is another big secret weapon that I was going to mention at the beginning, but I said now is a better time. I wanted to cover the boundaries one first, but the second biggest weapon is being able to handle criticism really well. So that's when this comes in. So whenever I test stuff out, I tell my friends, if I ask my sister to help me test something out, I'll say, roast it. Be ruthless. I'll ask my friends, I'll say, be ruthless with it. Don't hold back. And I handle criticism better than you think I would. But tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me what you hate about it. Tell me what you want to see change. And you just test, 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 and test. And then the fifth step, I'm sure that's the fifth one, which is then you think about your business's housing. So the infrastructure, the actual structure of it, things like, okay, now how am I gonna, what's the cycle that I'm gonna take my client through from beginning to end? So if, let's say, they land on my website, they're gonna look at everything, here's the problems that this product solves where other products couldn't solve it. Here's why you're in the right place, all of that. Then they, reach out to you. What do you do when they reach out to you? They want to book you. What do you do when they want to pay you? So all those things, that whole cycle, that whole structure from beginning to end. And, what do you do when they become your client? Are you going to send them emails? Do you do stuff over DM, like those kinds of things? And that happens, all of that, you test these cycles out. And then the last step is, okay, this is working. I've gotten at least 3 clients who've paid for this. Now it's time to go on a bigger scale. And then now you can tell everyone, you can go out onto the streets and say, I've got this pamphlet, I've got this thing, or you approach what we would call hubs. In our Marketing for Hippies community, we go to hubs, we say, I've got this thing that could help your people. And then you do the promoting, and then it's more likely that you're going to get bites, because now you tested this and it works. And a lot of people in that audience are going to say, hey, I tried the same things that your previous clients tried, but I didn't try your method. So let me try your method. And then it works. And now they're raving fans. So that's what I would recommend.
I love the test. I love all of it. The 2 biggest parts that stand out for me is like the gathering information, whether you call it avatar interviews, ideal client questionnaires, like talking to people. What have you tried before? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What worked? What didn't work? What would you like to be differently? So like gathering data in whatever way, and then testing your product, but being clear with the kind of feedback that you want. I love how you said with your sister, be ruthless, tear it apart. I can take it. If you can't take it, then be clear on which bits you want the feedback on and what kind of feedback that you want. So like whenever I launch anything that's like final production stage, like it's on my website, and I will say to people, like, it depends. Sometimes I'll be like, I just want to hear how much you like it. Like you might be thinking, oh, Suze just wants her ego bolstered. But if I've looked at something for hours and I've moved graphics around and whatever, sometimes I just want to hear thumbs up. But there are other times, like it depends where I am on the journey. In the testing phase, I'm like you, rip it apart. I'm not offended. I'm always honest. My spelling and grammar aren't the best. So sometimes people are like, oh, like there's a product I launched recently. It was called the Mighty 90. I am new to the platform that I launched it on. Not new to the product, not new to whatever, but in the past I'd always done things through Facebook groups, and now I don't use social media. So I have it housed in this place called Thrivecart. The sales page to me looked fucking sexy. I was like, this is great. Anyway, one of the people, I sent it to a few friends before I made it live to my list. And she's like, it's like it's out of order. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, what do you mean it's out of order? And I'm like, can you send me a screenshot? Anyway, I didn't realize with Thrivecart, there's mobile view, which is the different thing to computer view. So to me, it looked great, but she's looking at it on her mobile phone or cell phone, depending where you're in the world. And the boxes are all out of order. And I was like, well, shit, that makes no sense. So I was like, great, thank you. And that testing thing, because if I put that live out to my list, I can imagine half of them being like, what is she on about? Because the boxes of text were not in the right order. It was like the name of the product, then it was pay me, then it was the dot points, and then it was what it was. And it was just like, yeah, it was so confusing. And also, when you do, say they had gone to live, because sometimes you'll put something out and it will be a schmozzle. That your ideal clients, like the people who are meant to work with you, once they see it again or whatever, like there's more than one chance at a first impression. It's not like, oh, I'm sunk forever. Because what I see some people doing is staying forever in testing, perfecting, and never actually going live and risking the people. Like the first time I got like a 1-star review on my book, I did feel a sting, but I also was equal parts like, I'm a real author now. It's not just my friends and that commenting and writing reviews. Like, it's getting out there because nobody universally likes everything. Some people are a bit harsh with their feedback, but is what it is. So I love this 5 framework. So is this what you do? Like, do you take people through this? Or is this just something you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I take people through, I would say anything that's before actually going out and promoting, but I love the beginning parts where it comes to, I would say I'm a bit further along than if it's right at the beginning of an idea. Let's say you're just starting out with a business idea and you're testing it. I'm still working on things to help people out with that, but usually who I help out are people who have been doing this for years, and maybe they've even tested in the background, but they've got all of this client data, they've got all of this market research, but they just don't know what to do with it. And they also haven't structured their businesses in a way that says, okay, I'm going to get repeat clients. Because you'll be surprised, people have been doing this for 10 years, for 20 years, 40 years, and they haven't had repeat clients. And so with me, with my first, yes. And with me, or maybe 1 or 2, because for the first 7 years that I did my henna art, I had out of maybe 100 clients or so, I think, I had maybe 1 or 2 repeat clients.
Interesting.
And nobody would come back.
How did that come to your attention? And then what did you shift? I'm fascinated because to me, repeat clients have been the backbone of my business from early on. So I'm really fascinated by this.
I think it's because not having the structures in place to facilitate repeat clients. It's, okay, you get the client and then maybe they enjoy the session, but then they don't come back. And then what do you do afterwards? And then you got to you got to look right from the beginning. Okay, so if they're not paying you, maybe you don't have different payment systems, or maybe if they have last minute cancellations, you don't have policies and you're not enforcing those policies around what happens when they cancel. Are we giving them enough reminders to show up for the session? Are we taking a 50% deposit before we, I feel like when you charge a deposit, you need to show them, okay, I can be trusted. I've done this work before. And so you don't have to be afraid that if you pay me the deposit, I'm going to run away with your cash. But it is so interesting because, I didn't have all of those things in place. And when I took my business full time for the past 3 years, so like I've been doing my henna arts and stuff like that, I went rigorously from the beginning. I said, okay, what are we going to do from the beginning? Take me through your pricing, because I used to confuse revenue for profit, and that's why I wasn't sustainable. Yeah. And so I learned about what profit was. I learned about what margins were. I learned about having a pricing calculator spreadsheet. So I geek out on both. So I love both the creative, artistic stuff, and I love the technical stuff. But why people don't really get repeat clients is because it goes back to, well, who am I serving? Usually people who don't get repeat clients, they'll say my service can help everybody. Or they'll say, they'll say, this is for anyone, it's whether it's like for me, the henna art, birthdays and weddings and, small children's parties and older people's parties and this and this and this. And then I said, nope, I got to hone in who I cater to. So I worked exclusively with bridals. So I niched down, and then I worked with specific, how do I say it, specific types of designs, because a lot of the artists in my peer group are quite traditional, which is beautiful. And I'm not that traditional. I'm not, in the realm, because a lot of people are deeply religious, they're deeply immersed in all of these traditional things, and I'm not. I'm a bit unorthodox. So things like niching down and seeing who, I don't want to I don't want to run away with the train of thought too much,
No,
but
I'll bring it back in, because I think that
Sure.
is a really excellent point, because I know you do henna art, and I'm not meaning to be derogatory to compare it to face painting, but that's what came to mind because I've had a face painter for my kid's birthday party. First time I hired someone, they were basically like, I can paint anything. And the kids lined up. It took forever because, you know what kids are like. They can't make up their mind. And then they see, and this person has that. And anyway, long story short, I was like, I'm never hiring her again, because she was great, but it just took so long. That the segment of the party that, long story short, the next time the kids wanted a face painter, I found someone who's like, I do this, this, or this. So she had 3 designs on a poster, and the kids
Yep.
could choose. And it was like, it was nice, smooth. It was, and then we got on to the other stuff. And I love that, because sometimes we think if I have this, this, or this, then people are like, oh no, they won't want that. But they've done studies, like I think it was on flavors of jam, and they had a supermarket, you can go and test stuff. And one time they had 3 flavors, like, black currant, raspberry, and blueberry. And another stall had 27 flavors. And the conversion rate, and what I mean by conversion rate for anyone listening who's not familiar with it, is like people who then go on to buy. Because you don't just go hand out these jams, hoping for the best. You are, a business after all, and a business without clients is an expensive hobby. The conversion rate from the 3 flavors of jam trumped the 27 flavors. I'm going to quote it wrong and someone's going to complain. But basically, you could literally Google it. The studies, there's done lots of publishing on it, but it was considerable. So when you niche down, and also too, if someone comes to me and they're like, I want help with something, which I don't do, and I say, I can't help you with that, but here's a recommendation, like, because I do know people, similar, the fact that pays forward, because the person, they're so thankful. They're like, oh my gosh, you're the best. And then when they speak to someone else, like it comes back to you without a direct line, because they'll talk to someone else who talk to someone else. So niching down really does serve you. And the other thing that you mentioned, I think is really powerful, is the reminders. So when I was really early in business, I started my business on a shoestring budget, because so I didn't even have a calendar system. I did the old fashioned, you'd email me, I'd email you, we'd do the time zone conversion. It was exhausting. 0 stars, do not recommend. Very first paid thing I brought into my business is Acuity. So if anyone listening, it's a scheduler like Calendly or any of these other things. And for me, that was a big investment in the beginning, because I wasn't making any money. So to pay for something felt grand. But long story short, when I was doing it via email, I had, like, on those sales calls, discovery calls, whatever you want to call them, like an 80% no-show rate, which is significant, especially when I'm sitting there going, and then I'd email them and they'd reschedule, and it was exhausting. When I shifted to Acuity, it automatically gives them a 20. You're in my Acuity. As we recorded this, you would have got a 24-hour reminder, a 1-hour reminder, and a text message if you've opted in. Like, I make that optional, but if people
Yes.
put their phone number in, they also get a text message. That, I have a no-show now of, people do not no-show for me. They get that 24 hours and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, something's happened. Or the person I'm talking to after you just messaged me and said, I'm going to be running 10 minutes late. I have something that's finishing on the hour. Like, that discussion is a win for both of you. So in whatever works for you, some places do a 48-hour reminder. Some people do a 1 week. You get to explore and test. I love how you talk about testing what works for your business. But for me, 24 hours email, 1 hour text and email has been sensational. And sometimes people use an automated follow-up, like thanks for your session. Want to book another one? Like as you talk about, I personally don't like, this is just me, everyone's different, the automated follow-up, because I kind of find it skeezy, but you do you. But sometimes if I've booked like a psychic reading or something and I get the thing and go, here's a 10% off your next thing, I'm like, oh shit, yeah. So once again, test, does it fit in the business that you're doing? Does it feel good for you? Because I don't know, sometimes those automated ones and then like write back and say what you thought. If I write back and say what I thought and it's not acknowledged, that really annoys me. So, Lydi, we could talk about this for ages because I think this conversation is the things that people don't talk about. People talk about, like, I want to, as you said, start a henna business. I want to start a face painting business. I want to do coaching. I'm excited and enthusiastic about the thing. And then in the beginning, you tend to have people who followed you or people who know you, or you kind of have this little steady stream when you first start. And then it kind of is like bore dries up moment where, and often that can lead because of poor boundaries or because you haven't tested it or because it doesn't make sense what you're offering to people beyond the people who know you well. So all that being said, let the listeners know what it is that you do and how you can help them with that if they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is something I need.
Oh, thank you so much. And so what I love more than anything else is helping people find what is weird and wonderful about them that sets them apart, that they didn't even know about themselves. They didn't even notice that. And so in essence, what this helps is make you competition free in essence. And so with my own business, and I will bring it back to the what we're discussing from my henna business, why I feel confident to do this is because I've run my own business myself. So with the art stuff, I've been able to sell my own art from going from 1 or 2 repeat clients to now about 30% of my clients are repeat. So out of every 100 clients, 30% of them, like 30 of them come back. And after several years, I still have people who meet with me for coffee or they still purchase from me up till this date. And so when I asked them, and I would recommend this to you, no matter what you do, at the beginning of the session, when you're settling in with them, always ask them, so what inspired you to choose me over someone else? Or what inspired you to choose me or work with me? Because you could have had any other option, but why me? And they'll tell you because most people would love to tell you. And so I noticed my clients would say, your work just stood out to me. I chose you, even though you were the more expensive one. I looked around. I looked at so many people and I chose you because you were the more expensive one. Very rarely you'll hear, you were closer to me and stuff, but it was mostly like something about you stood out to me. Your work stood out to me. I picked you because you were better quality. And, oftentimes what will happen then is you'll discover you and your ideal clients are going to have very spooky similar backstories. And so that usually happens. And so what I love doing is discovering all of that in a safe space with people. Of course, you may think it's just, okay, I just need to start the website up. I just need to get the emails ready and then just send my business cards out. But so much of it is emotional stuff. So much of it is why did I land here? What's my journey up to this point? And why do I want to help people with this? Because there's a reason why you chose that specific thing. And so what I also help them with is untangling the beautiful message that they want to get through across through their work so that their ideal clients know that they are the person they were looking for. So I've heard things like, I've looked for you far and wide. I knew who I wanted to hire me for my bridal henna. I didn't even look at anybody else. People told me to keep searching, but then the bride would say, nope, I'm trusting my gut and my instinct. And then I'd do the bridal henna for her and she would say, I made the right decision. I knew it. Everybody was saying, look around, but I trusted my own intuition. Some people will say I was spirit-led. And so they just said, I'm going to come to you because of that. And then they end up becoming my repeat clients. And so what I do is maybe things like, I want to help you become your best self and realize yourself when you actualize and you manifest. Personally, I don't like the word manifest.
Neither do
Anything to,
I, but that's a story for another day.
yeah.
But I know what you mean, to bring about your desire.
Yes. And so they use language that's not really concrete, or it's too up in the air, or they understand what they're talking about, but then clients will be like, okay, be my best self, but how is that going to help me get a full night's sleep? Because I'm grouchy and I haven't slept. Being my best self is not what I'm worried about right now. I just want to sleep a full night. And so I untangle that message and I say, okay, so that's what you meant. That's what needs to go on your homepage. Or this is what you need to say to people. And, these things in and of themselves, getting to know yourself along the way, because I always say starting a business is the biggest self-discovery journey you will ever go through.
100%.
Yeah. And so that in and of itself is a boundary and a strong filter to let emotionally healthy clients know I'm available for business. And it helps you ward off, almost like ward off the crazies. It helps you ward off the boundary pushers, which is part of the battle that I want to help them fight. And also I love the behind the scenes strategy part, which is apart from getting to know my clients, talking to them about their business and listening to their stories. I love listening to their stories. And at the same time, I also love the behind the scenes strategy part because, I just discovered that when I took it full time, I said, I need to be a serious business owner now. I know I want to do the thing. I just want to do the artwork. I just want to do the fun stuff. I just want to do the teaching, but I need safe containers now to do that artwork. I need a safe space. I need designated time, designated space, and I need not a machine. I wouldn't say a machine, but kind of like the cogs will be turning smoothly. You have like a pulley system
A
that,
system.
okay,
Yeah, basically that's what I was
a
thinking. A system
system.
and a structure. Because otherwise, without
Yes.
that, like, I've got my water bottle here. Without the water bottle, the water will be all over the floor. So helping people have
Yes.
the structure, but their structure, like my water bottle, if you're listening to this on audio, and those of you on YouTube can see, is bright green. Other people might be like, oh my goodness, I don't want a green drink bottle. I want mine to be, but going back to what you said, so I'll link in the show notes Lydi's website. You have your offerings clearly laid out there, and then you have a couple of video examples of that. And I really like that. So you can have a look what it is that you do, like a worked example. And I love how you said, like, you bring out what's weird and wacky, because if you book on my website, there's a talk to me about coaching or something. I don't know. I can't stand the term discovery call. It has a name. Let's talk coaching. One of the questions is, why Suzanne? And sometimes people are like, oh, that's such a conceited thing to ask. But you get the most fascinating information. Most people who answer that, it's because, like, I like you because you swear. In the past, I would like try and put a damper on that or whatever. And now I just like kind of leave with it. People have said to me before, I like that you swear. I like that you wear wacky t-shirts. One lady was like, I like that you left medical school in 5th year because I did too. And as you said, the most bizarre thing that you say is an offhand thing. You think you're the only one in the world and you're not. But that can help streamline your message, and the bits that you might try and hide to be more corporate or professional are the parts that your ideal client, they're attracted to you, and then you get to find that by some simple tweaks in your asking that can help tweak your messaging, that can just move the needle in all directions. So I love all of this. So I'll put the link to the website in the show notes. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, I highly encourage you, go check out Lydia's site, look at the videos, see a worked example of what it is that she does. Yeah, no, that's right, English. It's the end of the day for me. So the evening recordings, I know you're across the world, so it's daytime for you, but sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's not making sense. You can see a worked example of it. But sometimes, and I think what I love about your work is it's not that spreadsheet, ticker box, demographic. My ideal client's name is Sally Sue, and she's 40 and she likes watching The Witcher. And like, that makes me want to die inside. And from what I gather from looking through stuff, that's not it.
Yes.
I love it. Anything else before we wrap up, Lydi?
I think the main thing would be for me personally, it breaks my heart to see small business owners becoming a statistic, because apparently 85% of people within the first 5 years who start a business fail, and it's not their fault. And it breaks my heart. I do not want people to be a statistic. I want them to succeed. I've gotten business coaching before. Coaching, useless. I was so angry afterwards. I said, they do not know what it takes to get someone from point A to point B with care and love. And not all business coaches are like this. I think I happened upon an agency who unfortunately didn't filter in, and they didn't know who they wanted to cater to. And
That's a whole
I
story.
now,
I've got a whole playlist. If you're on my YouTube, go to playlist scam/questionable business practices. I think that is a lot higher, unfortunately. Like, it's not everybody, but it is a lot. And they're like, it's no cookie cutter, but here's the cookie cutter. But all this to say, there are people who want to help you, as you said, either not become a statistic or become a statistic of the ones who are actually nailing it. So, you know, a statistic that you want to espouse. Thank
yes,
you
thank
so
you.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.